So welcome everyone, and let's see what we usually start with: some prayers, and then I'll also lead a meditation, continuing to meditate on the equalizing and exchanging self with others method for developing bodhicitta. So while reciting the prayers, it's good if you can imagine the Buddha in front of you, Shakyamuni Buddha, and you can imagine this single figure of the Buddha embodying all other objects of refuge, all other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and also spiritual teachers, present and past, and so on. So you can think in that way, or you can imagine the Buddha surrounded by many other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and all the lineage teachers and or present teachers and so on. So you can imagine them actually there around the Buddha. So that way we have something to focus on when taking refuge. And also think of all sentient beings who've all been our kind mothers and fathers and friends and children and sources of all of our happiness, food, clothes, shelter, medicine, and so on in this life and in all our previous lives as well. So we've received a huge amount of kindness and benefit and happiness from each and every sentient being. Now we're really fortunate that we have the chance to do something really meaningful to repay their kindness, and that is to generate bodhicitta and have the strong aspiration to become fully enlightened so we can help all those sentient beings. So you can imagine them around us, taking refuge along with us, or leading them and taking refuge in what will enable them to be free of all their suffering and find genuine peace and happiness. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence, and turn a wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate all my own virtue, as of all others, to the great enlightenment. This ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. And while reciting the mantra of the Buddha, you can imagine light flowing from the Buddha and filling your own body and mind. You can also imagine it going to all other sentient beings and filling their bodies and minds. And as we get filled with the light from the Buddha, which represents all his excellent qualities and realizations, it purifies our suffering and causes of suffering, especially ignorance and all the other afflictive emotions and karma and so on. And it nourishes our positive potential, our Buddha nature, so that that can be developed more and more and bring us quickly to the state of a Buddha ourselves. Taya ta om mune mune maha munaye soha. 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 So take a few moments to make sure your mind is really settled down in the present, the here and now. Put aside any other thoughts that aren't related to what we are doing here. You can always pick them up again later, but really decide to keep your mind focused on this class and what we are learning, these very precious teachings on the Bodhisattva's path to enlightenment. And also make sure your motivation for being here is that of bodhicitta, altruism, really caring about others, all living beings without exception. As we've been meditating the last few weeks, all living beings are equal in wanting happiness and wanting to not suffer. Everyone's exactly the same in that way. And so it doesn't make sense to discriminate among other beings and wish happiness for some, but wish others to not have happiness, or even worse, wishing them to suffer. So any such thoughts there may be in our mind are there because of past experiences, past conditioning, but we can change those thoughts. We don't have to continue feeding them, perpetuating them. Let go of any such thoughts and really open your hearts to all other people, all other beings. The Buddha himself sees all beings as equally deserving of his love, compassion, and his total dedication. It's like a mother dedicating herself to her children, totally taking care of them. So the Buddha is like that towards every living being. Since the Buddha cares equally for all living beings, it's important for us to try to have that attitude as well. And then make that your reason, your motivation for being here, participating in this class. So the last few weeks, we did meditation on the first point of the method of equalizing and exchanging self and others. This is one of the main methods for developing bodhicitta. So the first point is equalizing self with others, which involves contemplating how we're all equal, all living beings are equal in wanting happiness and not wanting to suffer. So we went through quite a few different points related to that to really try to see that that is the most appropriate, most reasonable, most positive way of thinking. So we really need to work on that. And then tonight we'll meditate on the next point in this process for developing bodhicitta, which is looking at the disadvantages or faults of self-centeredness. And this state of mind is often called self-cherishing. But that term can be somewhat misleading. So self-centeredness probably sounds more appropriate as a better term for this state of mind. And there's actually different levels of self-centeredness, coarse and subtle. So the coarse form of this is thinking of oneself as the center of the universe, thinking I am the center of everything. Everything revolves around me. I am more important than anybody else. So that kind of attitude. And this attitude also mainly is concerned with just being happy, getting what we want in this very lifetime, doesn't think beyond this life. So this state of mind, this coarse level of self-centeredness, often leads us to act unethically and even harmfully, doing harmful things to others. And so this coarse level of self-centeredness is the main one we need to start working on. And it's the cause of suffering. But we don't always recognize that. So we need to realize that it is a cause of suffering, not happiness, so that we can overcome it. And later I'll explain other levels of self-centeredness that are more subtle, but we'll focus on this coarse one for now. So start by thinking about some of the misfortunes that are happening in our world today. So there's the war in Ukraine, which is extremely tragic, creating a huge amount of suffering and problems, not just for the people in that part of the world, but people all over the world. It's leading to shortages of food and other resources. And there's other wars and conflicts as well going on. And the climate crisis, which many people are very worried about. Some people are not, unfortunately. And then there's also crime, violent crime, and corruption and injustice, and so on. So every day there's lots of really tragic things happening in the world. And these are the result of human behavior, driven by afflictive states of mind, such as greed, arrogance, hatred, ignorance, and self-centeredness. So just contemplate. You can just take one problem if you want and just try to recognize how self-centeredness, the self-centered attitude, is one of the main factors that leads to this problem and all the suffering arising from it. Bring to mind some experience from your own life. You just focus on one, or you could think of a few in which you acted selfishly, which the self-centered attitude came up strongly in your own mind and motivated you to act in ways that were possibly unethical, even harmful to others. So bring to mind one or more such incidents and investigate. Did those experiences bring happiness, bring benefit to you or to anybody else? And looking back from now on those experiences, how do you feel? Do you feel good about the way you behaved, or do you feel that you acted unwisely, unskillfully? And we can also recognize the problems caused by self-centeredness by thinking in terms of karma. So when bad things happen to us in our life, our usual tendency is to point the finger at somebody else, other people, or the government, things outside of ourselves. And it may be the case that some of those people are acting in a negative way. But Buddhism says the main cause for the problems, the bad things that happen to us, is our own karma from the past, usually past lives, which we mostly can't remember, but we can guess what kind of things we did in past lives based on what kind of experiences we're having now. So just some examples of that. When we have sickness or other kinds of health problems, these are the result of having killed and harmed others in past lives. If we have financial problems and lack of success in the things we try to do, these are the result of stealing, depriving others of their resources, and also the attitude of miserliness, not wanting to give, to share what we have. If we have fears and phobias, these are the result of having harmful intent. This is malicious thoughts, thoughts of wanting to harm others. So these are just a few examples of karma, having created those kinds of actions in a previous life. Then in a later life, like this life, we have these unpleasant results. And try to recognize that it's the self-centered attitude, the selfish attitude that lies behind those negative actions like killing, stealing, being miserly, having harmful intent, lying, gossip, and so on. So self-cherishing, self-centeredness is what comes up in our mind and then motivates us to do those actions together with afflictive states of mind. And then in a later life, or even later in that life, we experience suffering and problems as a result. So as a conclusion to this contemplation, if you're able to recognize that the self-centered attitude is the cause of suffering and problems for yourself, but also for others, and it stands in the way of our spiritual development, developing the positive qualities that we wish to develop and need to develop in order to follow the path, then make the determination to do the best you can to not let your mind follow this kind of attitude. It isn't something fixed and permanent that will always be there in our mind. It is something we can decrease and eventually overcome, but we do need to make effort to do so. And that effort, that energy comes from recognizing that this is bad for us. This state of mind is not good for us. It's actually bad for us. It's counterproductive. I'll see if you can make that resolution. So at the beginning, I mentioned there's different levels of self-centeredness, and I just mentioned the coarse one. So that's the biggest problem we have to work on. And there's also a subtler form of self-centeredness that isn't quite as negative as that. In fact, it's even virtuous because it's concerned about our future experiences, like in our future lives, wanting to have good rebirths, wanting to be born in good situations and avoid bad ones. And so it's still, just concerned about me and not concerned about, helping all other beings. But it does motivate us to engage in virtuous actions and refrain from non-virtue. So it's not really negative. It's not completely positive, but it's not completely negative either. And it's still self-centered. And then there's an even subtler level of the self-centered attitude. And that is looking even further, having an even higher goal, which is the attainment of liberation, nirvana, liberating oneself from the whole of samsara, dying and taking rebirth and experiencing all the sufferings of samsara and so on. And so wanting to get out of samsara and attain nirvana, liberation, but it's still just thinking in terms of one's own benefit and not thinking of helping all other sentient beings. So that's still a kind of self-centered attitude, although it's at least working in a positive direction, taking us towards liberation. But for bodhisattvas, for somebody who wants to follow the bodhisattva path, Mahayana path, and go to full enlightenment, all those levels of self-centeredness are things that need to be overcome. So the coarse and the subtler one, and then the very subtle one. And also earlier I said that the term self-cherishing, which is the one you usually come across in Buddhist texts and also teachings, they usually use the term self-cherishing, but that term can be kind of misleading because when we hear that, oh, self-cherishing is bad and we have to eliminate it, it can sound as though we shouldn't take care of ourselves. We shouldn't care about ourselves and do anything for ourselves. But that isn't the meaning. That's a misunderstanding. So sometime last year in one of the teachings that the Dalai Lama was giving online, and at the end of the teaching, he usually invites questions from people. So during one of those teachings, a woman asked the question, can self-compassion help us to generate bodhicitta? And the Dalai Lama replied, just as you cherish yourself, you should cherish all other sentient beings. We don't say that you should abandon cherishing yourself because you yourself need to attain Buddhahood. Some texts say things like, hold others dear and abandon yourself. This doesn't mean literally not to work for yourself. And then he spoke about how the Buddha practiced very, very hard in order to achieve enlightenment, his own practice of enlightenment. And so then the Dalai Lama said, so what you need to get rid of is the extreme self-centered attitude. The reasonable cherishing of self is not something you need to abandon. So he made a distinction between a unreasonable, extreme form of self-centeredness, like the one we were meditating on, the one that can lead us to act unethically and harmfully just to achieve our own goals. And so that's definitely one we need to get rid of. But then he mentions a reasonable form of of self-care, maybe it's better to say self-compassion or self-love, that's not something we need to abandon. Because I've often heard the Dalai Lama talk about how we do need to have love for ourselves and compassion for ourselves. Otherwise, it's difficult to have those feelings for others. You know, if we hate ourselves and beat ourselves up, then it's very hard to really love and care for others. Yeah. But on the other hand, we also need to make sure that the love and the compassion we have for ourselves are healthy ones. It's not that we're indulging ourselves, indulging our ego, our desires, and so forth, but instead doing the things that will really bring about happiness, genuine happiness, especially Dharma happiness, fortunate rebirths, liberation, full enlightenment, and so on. And also, our own happiness depends on positive attitudes towards others, such as compassion and love. So again, the Dalai Lama often talks about, if you want to be selfish, be wisely selfish. He talks about wise selfishness. Yeah. If you care about yourself, you want yourself to be happy, then do the things that will bring you genuine happiness. And that is to have compassion and love for others. That's the best way to achieve our own happiness and also benefit others. So I hope that's clear. Next week, we'll do some more meditation on this point, because the self-centered attitude is quite a sticky one, a tricky one. So for tonight, we put the slides up. I want to start by answering a question that came up last week. So one of the things we looked at last week was a twofold division of the path of seeing into, one is called the path of seeing that acts to pass through, and the path of seeing that is to be passed through. Kind of strange terminology, but the first one, the path of seeing that acts to pass through, is just the usual meaning of the path of seeing, the direct realization of emptiness, of true existence. And then the path of seeing that is to be passed through, that includes other realizations that a bodhisattva needs to develop. For example, the direct realizations of impermanence, subtle impermanence, direct realization of selflessness of persons. And so those are objects that a bodhisattva doesn't mainly focus on. Bodhisattva's main project is to realize emptiness, to develop this wisdom that directly realizes emptiness of true existence. So that's the one they put most of their energy into. But they do also need to meditate on and gain the realizations of other things, such as impermanence and selflessness of persons and so on. And so what we looked at last week was that this is what it says in the commentary, that when the bodhisattva attains the path of seeing, so they are in a state of meditation, meditative equipoise, meditating on emptiness, and they pass from the path of preparation, where they still have a conceptual realization of emptiness, and then there's this transformation in their mind where the conceptual appearance dissolves or ceases to be, and they have the direct non-conceptual realization of emptiness. So that's how they move from the path of preparation to the path of seeing, and it's at that point they become an Arya, a superior being. And so this is what's happening on a manifest level. We're having this direct realization of emptiness. But then in their mind, there are these other realizations that they have also been working on and developing. So those are there in their mind in a non-manifest way. So those include like realization of impermanence, realization of selflessness of persons, and so on. So those other realizations are there in their mind in a non-manifest way, and they're not yet direct realizations. But when the Bodhisattva gains this first direct realization of emptiness, those other meditations also transform into direct realizations in a non-manifest way. And so this is what came up last week. And then at the end of class, Steve asked, as I said, a bodhisattva cannot have a direct realization of impermanence and selflessness of persons and so on before the path of seeing. So they only happen at the time of the path of seeing. And so Steve asked why that is, why they can't happen beforehand. And I said that I would look for an answer. And so I found an answer in the transcript of a course on tenets that was taught at Nalanda by one of the Geshis there, Geshe Jampel Gyaltsen. And he was talking about yogic direct perceivers and direct realization. So anyway, this is the quote I pulled out from the transcript. It says, all philosophical schools other than Prasangika say that a direct realization is necessarily in the continuum of an Arya being and never in the continuum of an ordinary being. So put aside Prasangika for a moment, and all the other schools, which includes this, the one we're looking at here, which is the Yogacara Svatantrika Madhyamaka. So that school and all the other schools that aren't Prasangika all say that only Aryas can have direct realizations. And direct realizations, for example, direct realization of impermanence and selflessness and so on, these are yogic direct perceivers. So yogic direct perceiver is quite a special realization. And yeah, so only Aryas can have those in their continuum. And so that's why, according to this school, Yogacara Svatantrika Madhyamaka, the bodhisattva prior to the path of seeing cannot have direct realizations of any topic, including subtle impermanence, because you'd think, well, subtle impermanence is easier to realize than emptiness. So, you kind of think, well, they should be able to have direct realization of that before the path of seeing. But, this is what is said, and I don't know what their reasons are for saying that, but this is part of their tenet system, that direct realizations of subtle impermanence, selflessness, emptiness, and so on are only in the minds of Aryas, so they cannot happen before the path of seeing. But according to Prasangika, they say otherwise. Prasangika says ordinary beings can have direct realizations of some topics like subtle impermanence and a coarse selflessness of persons before the path of seeing. They can have those, but they can't have a direct realization of emptiness before the path of seeing, because that's what starts the path of seeing. So as soon as there's the direct realization of emptiness, which is a much more subtle topic, much more difficult to understand. So as soon as they have that direct realization, then they're on the path of seeing, they're an Arya being. But prior to that, they can have other direct realizations. So is that clear? Yeah, so every tenet school has different assertions, different ways of explaining things. And they probably all have their reasons. for why they say. Maybe they point to certain things in the texts, in the sutras or in the commentaries, where they have reasons, valid reasons for what they say. But anyway, this is one of the difficulties with tenets, studying tenets. Okay, so now we'll continue. We have been going through chapter 2 of the Ornament, which is called, well, the main topic, main subject matter of chapter 2 is the knower of paths. Knower of paths. So that's a certain type of realization, clear realization. And there were 11 topics for the knower of paths. We went through the first 4, and tonight I'll try to finish the last remaining ones, 5 to 11. They're not particularly complicated. I won't share too much information. But these remaining 7 topics in chapter 2 are all related to the path of meditation, Mahayana path of meditation. And we haven't really looked too much at the path of meditation, so I just thought to explain a little bit about it. So just some points here. First point says, in general, a path of meditation is defined as a subsequent clear realization, because a path of meditation is a clear realization, and that term clear realization again means a path, a wisdom. It's a particularly high state of mind, a realization. And so it's a clear realization, and it's subsequent to the path of seeing. So the path of seeing is a very important milestone, because that is the point at which one has the first direct realization of one's main topic of meditation. Like for Bodhisattva, it's emptiness. Okay, so when a Bodhisattva finally gets the direct realization of emptiness, they attain the path of seeing. And then the path of meditation is after the path of seeing. And the reason it's called a path of meditation is because the Bodhisattva needs to continue meditating on emptiness that they now have realized directly. And so they go in and out of meditation, meditative equipoise, focusing on emptiness with, the wisdom, directly realizing emptiness. And so they need to do that again and again and increase the familiarity, their familiarity with emptiness. But they also need to accumulate a lot of merit. My understanding is it's the accumulation of merit, practicing generosity and so on, that empowers their wisdom realizing emptiness, so that it becomes more and more powerful and able to eliminate the obscurations, the objects that need to be abandoned in stages. We'll look at that a little bit more later. Yeah, so we'll get more information about the path of meditation later. But here in chapter 2, these final 7 topics in chapter 2 are related to the path of meditation, and they're to help us, or to help anybody, generate enthusiasm, to get excited about attaining the path of meditation by looking at how beneficial it is. And so some of these last topics of chapter 2 are paths of meditation themselves. They are different aspects of the path of meditation, but some are not. Some are benefits that one attains as a result of cultivating the path of meditation. So these benefits are different kinds of qualities or different kinds of experiences. We'll look at a few examples of them later. And then the second bullet point here says, the path of meditation has the same threefold division as the path of seeing. So a few weeks ago, we looked at how the path of seeing has these three divisions. And so they're just mentioned here. The first one is called Exalted Wisdom of Meditative Equipoise. And that refers to when the bodhisattva goes into meditation and they're deeply absorbed in a meditative state, focusing on either emptiness, or it could also be selflessness of persons or non-duality. But their mind is, deeply absorbed in a state of meditation, directly realizing their object of meditation. So there's times when a bodhisattva is in that mode of being, in that state of being. And so that's one type of the path of seeing, and also the path of meditation. Okay, so that's one of the divisions of the path of meditation. And the second one is called subsequent attainment, exalted wisdom of subsequent attainment. So that's when the bodhisattva is not in a state of meditation, but at other times, like break times, sometimes called. And so they always have bodhicitta. They're always focused on working for the benefit of sentient beings, doing everything with that motivation. So they would be practicing giving. And even when they're doing other things, like if they have to eat or sleep or take a walk or whatever, their mind is still, focused on bodhicitta and great compassion. And so they're able to transform everything into the path to enlightenment. So that's subsequent attainment. And the third of the threefold division is called neither of those two. So it's exalted wisdom that's neither of the other two. And in that category are non-manifest realizations. So, for example, when the bodhisattva is in meditative equipoise, single-pointedly focused on emptiness, that's the only thing they're aware of. Only emptiness is appearing to their mind at that time. But they still have within their mind other realizations in a non-manifest way, a sort of, unconscious or under the surface way. For example, bodhicitta. So they still have bodhicitta in their mind at that time, but in a non-manifest way. So that non-manifest bodhicitta that they have when they're in meditative equipoise, that's an example of the third type of path of meditation. And likewise, when they're in subsequent attainment, when they're having a break from meditation, and at that time, bodhicitta is manifest, compassion is manifest, generosity, patience, all these positive qualities are manifest. But the wisdom of emptiness is non-manifest, because they're not yet at the point where they can have the direct realization of emptiness when they're not in meditative equipoise. So that one becomes non-manifest during subsequent attainment. So that third category then are non-manifest realizations that are in the bodhisattva's mind. So just as the path of seeing has those three divisions, so does the path of meditation. So those are three different types of path of meditation. And then down at the bottom, there's also a twofold division of the path of meditation. And these terms only come up with the path of meditation, but not the path of seeing. So one is called contaminated, and the other is uncontaminated. And the terms contaminated and uncontaminated usually have a different meaning. Like the term contaminated usually means contaminated by afflictions, especially ignorance. Okay, so anything that's mixed up with or influenced by ignorance, greed, hatred, and other afflictions, and karma is said to be contaminated. So, for example, our aggregates, when they say our aggregates are contaminated because they are produced by afflictions and karma, And while we're alive, they're completely full of afflictions and karma. And so, yeah, that's the meaning. That's the usual meaning of contaminated. And then uncontaminated is the opposite. It's free of afflictions and karma. That's the usual meaning. But here, when they use these terms for the path of meditation, contaminated means conceptual path of meditation, and uncontaminated means non-conceptual. So among the divisions of the path of seeing, there are some that are conceptual. For example, bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is a conceptual mind. The conceptual mind is the opposite of non-conceptual. So it's like all the thoughts that we have are conceptual, and our thoughts, our concepts are understanding their object via a mental image. Sometimes it's called a generic image or a mental image or a conceptual image. There's some kind of image in our mind of the object. And so it's not the same as a direct non-conceptual experience. So some aspects of the path of meditation are like that. They're conceptual. For example, bodhicitta or great compassion or love. These are conceptual states of mind until Buddhahood, until one becomes a Buddha. They're still conceptual. So those would be called contaminated. But you have to understand, it doesn't have the same meaning as usual. And then uncontaminated path of meditation are those divisions of the path of meditation that are non-conceptual. Those would be like the meditative equipoise, when the bodhisattva is in meditative equipoise, directly realizing emptiness or selflessness. So those states of mind are non-conceptual. They're dealing with their object, experiencing their object in a direct, naked, non-conceptual way, no mental image in the way. So the reason I'm bringing this up here is because as we go through the remaining topics of chapter 2, some of them are called contaminated path of meditation and some are uncontaminated path of meditation. So those terms can be kind of confusing because you'd think the path of meditation is way beyond being contaminated and uncontaminated. So they do have this particular meaning here. And I don't know why. I haven't come across an explanation as to why they use those terms, but it's part of the tradition in the Ornament and its commentaries. Okay, so let's start looking at the remaining topics of chapter 2. Okay, so topic 5, I'm calling it 2.5, is called function of the path of meditation. Function is a funny word. It's actually talking about benefits. So that's the meaning here. Benefits of the path of meditation, benefits that one will gain by cultivating the path of meditation. And so I just give a few examples here. One example is pacifying manifest afflictions. So that means afflictions like anger and greed, selfishness, and so on, jealousy, that these no longer occur in a manifest way in one's mind. They haven't been completely eliminated at this, when you're on the path of meditation, you haven't yet eliminated the afflictions. They don't get completely eliminated until you're Buddha, according to this school anyway. So you still have them in the mind, but they never come up in a manifest way. They never come up on the surface. So your mind is very much subdued. You have gained mastery over your mind. And another of the benefits is bowing to all. Does that sound like a benefit? So it's explained as because of having pacified the manifest afflictions And among those afflictions are pride and arrogance. So they have been, very much pacified internally. So then externally, one bows to all beings, says the spiritual guide and so on. And I presume it, even includes animals and insects, all beings. So a bodhisattva at this point has great humility and great respect for all living beings and is able to bow to all living beings. So it makes me think of His Holiness and Lama Zopa Rinpoche and these other lamas. When you see them in a crowd of people and beings, they don't show any arrogance at all. They show incredible humility and warmth and concern, and very, very attentive to all the beings around them. The next one, 2.6, is Mahayana path of meditation of belief. And this is a path of meditation. This is an actual clear realization. But it's a conceptual one. So it doesn't mention it here, but it's a contaminated, meaning conceptual path of meditation. And it says it's a clear realization, convinced that the mothers are the source of three welfares. So the three welfares are one's own welfare, others, and both one's own and others. So this shows, that, Bodhisattva is still concerned about his own welfare, or her welfare, or their welfare. That they do have to work on themselves, free themselves from the remaining obscurations preventing their attainment of enlightenment. So they do need to be concerned about that. And then the term mothers could have a few different meanings. So last bullet point, mothers could refer either to the three principal perfection of wisdom sutras. I think I mentioned that way back in the beginning of the course, that because the Ornament is said to be a commentary to the perfection of wisdom sutras. And there's a number of different perfection of wisdom sutras, but there's three that are the main ones. And they are called the Great Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, which has 100,000 verses, and the Middling that has 25,000 verses, and then the Small has 8,000 verses. So those are said to be the three main ones, and they're sometimes called mothers, the Mother Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. The other meaning of mother could be three types of perfection of wisdom. So this is actually something that comes up earlier in the text, but I skipped over it. This term perfection of wisdom. What does it actually mean? What does it actually refer to? What is the perfection of wisdom? And so it mentions three types of perfection of wisdom. One is textual perfection of wisdom. And so this refers to texts that explain the perfection of wisdom, such as the 100,000 verse, the 25,000 verse, and so on, down to the Heart Sutra, the Vajracutter Sutra. So these are some of the perfection of wisdom sutras. So any text that explains the perfection of wisdom, that's the textual perfection of wisdom. And then path perfection of wisdom refers to paths, which again are realizations, clear realizations in the minds of bodhisattvas. And they don't have to be Arya bodhisattvas. So bodhisattvas right from the beginning of the path of accumulation. So the paths, the realizations in their minds are called the path perfection of wisdom, because they lead the bodhisattva to the actual perfection of wisdom. So the actual perfection of wisdom is the third one, the resultant. So the resultant perfection of wisdom is the Buddha's omniscient mind. So yeah, the mind of a Buddha, exalted knower of all aspects, omniscience, enlightenment, whatever you want to call it. So that's the resultant perfection of wisdom. And it's said that of these three types of perfection of wisdom, only the third one is the real one. So the real perfection of wisdom is that. It's the Buddha's wisdom of a Buddha. But the other two are called perfection of wisdom because they lead to that. So the textual perfection of wisdom, by hearing, studying, reflecting on the explanations of the perfection of wisdom, that gets us started, gets us going in the direction of attaining the actual perfection of wisdom. And then the path perfection of wisdom, these are the actual realizations that a bodhisattva achieves as they progress along the path. So these lead to the resultant perfection of wisdom, but that third one is the main one. So those three types of perfection of wisdom are also called mothers. It's another meaning of the term mothers. So the mothers could be the perfection of wisdom sutras, or they could be these three types of perfection of wisdom. So this path of meditation of belief is conceptual mind, conceptual realization of a bodhisattva that's convinced that the mothers are the source of welfare, one's own welfare, others' welfare, and both one's own and others. And so, yeah, that's a type of path of meditation. So then next one is called the benefits of the path of meditation of belief. So this is also not an actual path of meditation, but they are qualities, excellent qualities that one gains as a result of cultivating the last one. So by cultivating the path of meditation of belief, then there will be these excellent qualities. And so an example of the excellent qualities is being praised by the Buddhas. So the Buddhas are expressing their joy and admiration for the Bodhisattva by praising the Bodhisattvas. And the purpose for the Buddhas to praise the Bodhisattvas is so the Bodhisattvas will feel enthusiasm. And it made me think about like parents, when children come home from school and they show their, their schoolwork or their report cards to their parents, and they show that they've done really well, then the parents will be very happy and praise them. And that way the children get encouragement. So maybe it's a bit like that. The Buddhas are giving encouragement to the Bodhisattvas. Well done, keep going. So they don't give up. But it's also just in accordance with reality. That's what our teacher explained, because the Bodhisattvas are doing such amazing things. They're just working so hard for the benefit of everybody, both themselves and others. And the things that they're doing, the actions they're doing are just wonderful. They are praiseworthy. And so, the Buddhas are praising them. And our teacher said, this isn't like flattery, but it's in accordance with reality, the actual existence of excellent quality. So there are excellent things going on in the Bodhisattvas' activities, and the Buddhas are just pointing that out. And that our teacher said this is something we should do as well. In fact, one of our bodhisattva vows in the secondary vows, 46 secondary vows, number 44 says that it's a transgression not to praise others when they have done something good, something positive. So we actually should express praise of the good deeds, good actions of others. Otherwise, we're transgressing that bodhisattva vow. It depends on the motivation, though. If you're withholding praise due to anger or spite, indifference, or laziness, then it becomes a transgression. But in some cases, you may have a good reason, a valid reason not to give praise. But anyway, it is a practice that we need to do starting now. So it's really important and very virtuous for us to acknowledge good qualities and good actions of others, feel happy about them, and express praise of them when appropriate. And just in case we find it difficult to do this, it could be good to explore that. Well, what's blocking me from doing that? And then we'll have a better understanding of what we can work on. Okay, number 8 is called the path of meditation of dedication. And this again is an actual path of meditation. It's a conceptual one, meaning contaminated. And it dedicates all virtues to enlightenment. So it's said in the commentary that bodhisattvas on the path of meditation make 12 kinds of dedications of virtue, their own virtue, and also others. They also dedicate the virtues of others, and they dedicate them to enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. And the reason they do this is to make the virtue inexhaustible. By dedicating our virtue, our merit for enlightenment, then it becomes inexhaustible for all sentient beings. That merit will keep going, keep bringing beneficial results as long as there are sentient beings in samsara. And these dedications that the Bodhisattva makes are conjoined with special method and wisdom. So the way they're conjoined with wisdom means that the Bodhisattva has the realization of emptiness of true existence of all things, in particular when they are dedicating, they are aware that they themselves, the person who is dedicating the merit, and also the merit that they are dedicating, and the object to which they are dedicating. So these 3 spheres, 3 different aspects of the action of dedication, they are all empty of existing truly. They don't exist truly, but they still exist conventionally. So the Bodhisattva is able to maintain awareness of the 2 levels of truth, 2 levels of reality, things existing conventionally, but at the same time not existing ultimately or truly. So in that way, they are able to avoid the 2 extremes, nihilism and absolutism or permanence. So that's how wisdom conjoins their practice of dedication. And their dedications of merit are also conjoined with method, the method side of the path. And in this case, it's methods to help sentient beings, showing sentient beings the path by which they can attain higher goals like liberation and enlightenment. So I think that's true for anything a bodhisattva does. There's always those two aspects of method and wisdom. They're never completely, missing one. They always maintain method and wisdom in all their actions. And our teacher also explained that there's a difference between dedication and prayer. Because in prayer, you're simply expressing a wish, like, may all sentient beings be happy, or may my grandmother recover from her broken hip. So you're just making a kind of prayer, but you're not, he says there's no substance like merits that are being dedicated to that aspiration that you're praying for. Whereas with dedication, you can express similar prayers or aspirations, but there's a substance. That's the term we use, substance, which is the merit of the virtue that we've created. And so we're making a prayer, but we got this substance of the merits that we're dedicating to what it is we're praying for. So we would say, due to my merits, may all sentient beings be happy. Due to my merits, may my grandmother recover, and so on and so forth. So in that way, it's both a prayer and a dedication. So he didn't say, we should only do dedications and not prayers. I think it's fine to do both, but just to point out the difference between prayers and dedications. So next is number 9. So the 9th, I lost my place. So the 9th topic is called the path of meditation of rejoicing. And this again is a actual path of meditation, a clear realization, but it's a conceptual one, contaminated one. And it cultivates joy in either one's own or others' roots of virtue. So here the bodhisattvas rejoice in the virtue that they themselves have created, but also rejoice in others' virtues with an extremely joyful mind. And again, they do this practice with awareness of the two truths, that virtues exist conventionally, but not ultimately. On the ultimate level, all these virtues are empty of true existence. And then there's just this little summary here of the 3 contaminated paths of meditation. And there's an analogy given in the text to help us understand their sort of function or purpose. Okay, so the first of the contaminated paths of meditation was the path of meditation of belief, number 7. So that's where you have this conviction that the 3 mothers are the source of everyone's welfare, one's own and others. So with this, it says one accumulates a vast amount of merit, and it's similar to discovering gold. So if you're, say, in a cave, exploring a cave, and you find some nuggets of gold, then you'll probably be very happy and excited because gold is valuable. You can use it to buy lots of things. So in a similar way, with this path of meditation of belief, one accumulates a great deal of merit by having this particular state of mind. And that merit is very valuable. With that merit, we can progress along the path and quickly reach enlightenment. It's like having gold. And the next one is path of meditation of dedication. So that's when we're dedicating all the merits to enlightenment. So It's transforming the merit into causes of enlightenment. And in the analogy, this would be like taking that raw gold and transforming it into jewelry, ornaments. Because I think raw gold, when you just find it in the earth, it's not particularly attractive or useful, just like that, you know. But then a jeweler, goldsmith, will know how to work with it and transform it into things that are extremely beautiful, like earrings and rings and so on. So in a similar way, bodhisattvas, with all this merit, this vast amount of merit that they create, know how to transform it into something really wonderful. The attainment of enlightenment, becoming a Buddha, becoming a fully enlightened being with all these incredible qualities with which to help sentient beings. And then the third contaminated path of meditation is that of rejoicing, number 9. So here one increases the merit by rejoicing in it. So you've created all this merit, you've dedicated all this merit to enlightenment, and then you rejoice in it as well. And by rejoicing in merit, it's increased. You have even more of it, and you're free of jealousy and unhappiness. So your mind is very joyful, not unhappy, not resentful. And so in the analogy, this is like delighting in the jewelry that was made. So you look at this beautiful jewelry and just feel very happy. How wonderful. And if you're a bodhisattva, you think about giving this away to others to bring them happiness. So this is talking about how bodhisattvas practice on a very high level of the path of meditation. And even if we're not there yet, we can still learn from this and start doing these practices ourselves, having belief, confidence in the effectiveness of the Dharma, and in particular, the perfection of wisdom teachings. And then dedicating whatever virtue we create, and also we can dedicate the virtue of others. When we dedicate our own virtue, we can add the virtue of all other beings, dedicating it all to enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. And rejoicing in the merit that we've created and the merit of others. So these are all practices we can start to do, and hopefully we are already doing them. Our teachers advise us to do these practices. So then the last two topics of chapter 2, 10 and 11, these are uncontaminated, non-conceptual paths of meditation. So that means they are direct, non-conceptual realizations. And also these two, even though they have different names, they're kind of divided, and each one has a different name, but they're actually synonymous. They're actually mutually exclusive. So it's like the same realization, but given different names because of different functions or different results that they bring. And so that's a bit like, just in ordinary life, a single person can be called a mother because she brought children into the world and raised those children. So she's a mother from that point of view. But maybe she also is a teacher, a school teacher. And so when she's at school teaching her students, then she performs that function. So the same person having two different functions and therefore two different names or terms applied to her. Okay, so the first one, number 10, is called Path of Meditation of Achieving. So again, this is an uncontaminated, non-conceptual path of meditation. And it's the cause of the final realization to be attained. And so the final realization refers to Buddhahood, full enlightenment, the omniscient state of mind that the Bodhisattva is aiming for. And that is the highest ultimate realization that anybody could attain. So that's why it's called the final realization. And this path of meditation is the cause of that. And it is a direct realization of emptiness, of true existence of all things. So, the Bodhisattvas have been working on this all along, probably even before they attain the path of accumulation. They've already started learning about emptiness, studying it, thinking about it, reflecting on it. And then at some point, they would gain a inferential, valid realization of emptiness, which is still conceptual. And then they would continue to meditate on that understanding of emptiness and eventually attain the direct realization of emptiness. And that's when they attain the path of seeing. And then all through the path of seeing and the path of meditation, they're continuing to meditate on emptiness, this direct realization of emptiness, directly seeing how everything exists, how everything is empty of true existence. And that is exactly how the Buddha sees things. Okay, so the Buddha is in that state of mind all the time, always seeing everything as empty of true existence. So in this way, the Bodhisattva is creating the cause to attain that state of mind of the Buddha by familiarizing themselves with emptiness, the emptiness of true existence of all things. Then they're getting closer and closer to the point at which they'll have the omniscient mind of a Buddha. And I mean, we can say that the realization of emptiness that a bodhisattva has, an Arya bodhisattva especially, the direct realization of emptiness of a bodhisattva and the direct realization of the emptiness of the Buddha are really the same. It's not like a Buddha understands emptiness better than a bodhisattva does. Yeah, they're both seeing emptiness directly. But one difference is that the bodhisattva can only have this direct realization of emptiness when they are in a state of meditative equipoise. Okay, so they have to be in that particular mode of being where their mind is just focused on emptiness and nothing else appears to them except emptiness. So conventional truths don't appear when they are in meditative equipoise on emptiness. Everything disappears, even their own body, their surroundings, people, sentient beings, everything disappears. Only emptiness appears. And then when they come out of that meditative state, then conventional things appear again. Their bodies, their surroundings, sentient beings, houses, trees, cars, and so on, those things will appear. But when they appear, when conventional things appear to this bodhisattva, they still appear as if they're truly existing. There's still this appearance of true existence. Okay, so a person, when they see a person, the person will appear truly existing. But the bodhisattva, because of the power of their realization of emptiness, they know that the person doesn't exist that way. No, they appear truly existing. They know they're not truly existing. So it's probably like ourselves when we look at a TV screen or a movie screen and we see people on the screen and they look like real people, but we know there's no real people on that screen or in that box. We know how that image appears, so we're not fooled by the appearance. So in a similar way, bodhisattvas are not fooled by the appearance of truly existing people, and so on. So that continues up until Buddhahood. There's still this appearance of true existence outside of meditation when the bodhisattva is not in meditative equipoise. So that appearance of true existence of things doesn't disappear until one becomes a Buddha. So with Buddhahood, to the mind of a Buddha can see conventional phenomena, conventional truths like people and houses and cars and so on. They don't appear truly existing. Buddha is able to simultaneously see conventional truths and ultimate truths, the emptiness of inherent existence, directly, every moment. Only a Buddha is able to do that. So even the highest level bodhisattva, right before becoming a Buddha, they don't have that ability. They're not able to completely stop the appearance of true existence. So this is what a bodhisattva is aiming for in their practice. They're aiming to attain that point where they can be aware of emptiness or directly see emptiness all the time in every moment, even when the conventional truths are appearing as well. So I think that's the meaning of this one, the path of meditation of achieving. So this is the direct realization of emptiness in the mind of a bodhisattva on the path of meditation. And it's the cause for the final realization, the wisdom of a Buddha. Yeah. And then the second one, number 11, is called the path of meditation of purity. And this is again, well, it's actually the same state of mind, like I said before. It's just got two different names to it because it's got different functions. So this is also an uncontaminated Mahayana path of meditation. And again, it's the wisdom directly realizing emptiness. And it's the cause of the final abandonment to be attained. So the final abandonment, again, refers to the Buddha's abandonment. And it's a complete abandonment, the abandonment of all obscurations, all the things that are to be abandoned without leaving any trace. So the term purity in the title of this path of meditation of purity, the term purity refers to true cessation. A true cessation is the abandonment of any portion of afflictions or obscurations such that they will never arise again. So in the case of non-Buddhas, like hearers and solitary realizers, bodhisattvas, well, I should say Aryas, Arya hearers, Arya solitary realizers, and Arya bodhisattvas, they have achieved a partial purity, partial abandonment of some of the obscurations, some of the things that need to be eliminated, like the acquired. So all the acquired afflictions and obscurations, they've abandoned those. As soon as they attain the path of seeing, they abandon all the acquired obscurations. So they have a partial purity, but there's still remainder of obscurations in their mind until Buddhahood. And so a Buddha has completely abandoned, completely eliminated all the obscurations without exception. So all the afflictive obscurations, all the knowledge obscurations, obscurations to omniscience, both the acquired, the innate, every last bit of obscuration has been eliminated. So that's the meaning of final abandonment. The final abandonment is the abandonment of a Buddha, complete eradication of all obscurations. So again, it's the same, number 11 is the same state of mind as number 10, but it's just given a different name, different term because of a different function. So that realization of emptiness in the mind of the bodhisattva on the path of meditation, it's the cause for the final realization, the Buddha's wisdom, and it's also the cause for the final abandonment, the Buddha's abandonment of all obscurations. And then the last bullet point says, there are 9 levels of the path of meditation. And they use this funny, I think I did talk, I think I did mention it once before. Yeah. They use these terms, small, small through great, great. I have a chart showing you this. Otherwise, it's very hard to figure it out. So there's 9 levels of the path of meditation, and the terms are small, small, middle, small, great, small, small, middle, 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 great, middle, small, great, middle, great, great, great. So those are the 9 levels, going from the small to the great. Yeah, so there it is. Just to make it easier for you. So those are the 9 levels of the path of meditation on the left-hand side. And they are the antidote to a certain portion of obscurations. Okay, so there's 9 levels or layers of obscurations that are abandoned on the path of meditation. And they also have this same terms, but they go the opposite. Okay, so as you can see, number 1, the small, small level of the path of meditation is the antidote to the great, great level of obscurations to be abandoned. And then we go down to the end. The great, great level of the path of meditation is the antidote to the small, small level of obscurations. And this may sound weird, like it seems to be the wrong way around. But the way it's explained is the terms, like when it comes, let me just see my notes here. Yeah, so a great level of obscuration means one that's really coarse, gross, and kind of more manifest. And in that way, it's easier to get rid of. It said that the coarser kinds of obscurations are easier to get rid of. Yeah, they're really gross, really coarse, easier to get rid of. And so you only need a small amount of effort to get rid of them. And so that's why the path of meditation that gets rid of the great level of obscurations is just is called small, small. And they use an analogy. There's an analogy that comes in the text that might help this make more sense. The analogy is washing clothes. And so if you have, let's say, a cloth, a piece of clothing, sometimes the dirt is just dust on the surface. And all you have to do is kind of just brush it off. Okay. You don't have to even wash it. You just brush the dirt, or maybe cookie crumbs or something. You just brush them off with very little effort. Maybe even just blow and they go off. And so that's an analogy of the great, great. So the great level of obscurations just needs a small amount of effort to get rid of it. Okay. So that's starting at the top with the first level of the path of meditation, getting rid of the great, great. And it also says that, that the small, small level has 2 levels, coarse and subtle. And the great, great level of obscurations has 2 levels, coarse and subtle. So that particular one is divided into 2, but we don't need to go into that now. That's more complicated. And so then as the obscurations go on and it becomes middle grade and small grade and great middle and so on. So then you're getting into subtler kinds of obscurations. And those can be related to stains that, like maybe mud. Okay, let's say you were rolling around in the mud, and so you got mud that sort of soaked into the cloth. And so that requires more effort. You need to put it into water and soap and maybe a little bit of scrubbing. If it's not a very bad stain, you just need a medium amount of effort to get rid of those stains. So there we're kind of in the middle of these, the middle level of the path of meditation, getting rid of the middling level of obscurations. And then you get down to the bottom, then you have subtler obscurations, and those are like maybe oil stain or certain types of stains that are really hard to get out, and you have to put soap and water and maybe scrub it with a scrub brush for a long time. So you have to put more effort to get rid of those stains because they're more subtle. So that's when you get to the later levels of the path of meditation. And the effort you need is greater, small, great, middle, great grade. That's the fine one. You need a great amount of effort to get rid of the small, meaning the subtlest, the stickiest, the ones that are really deeply embedded and hard to get out. So that's how it works. So I'm spending time on this because there's a whole big debate about it in the text where some opponent objects to this explanation and says, no, wait a minute, you got it all wrong. It shouldn't be like that. So the explanation is to clarify why it's said this way. So all we need to know about that is that as you go along on the path of meditation, you're abandoning layers or levels of obscurations. And what these obscurations are the the innate ones. The acquired obscurations were already abandoned on the path of seeing. So these are the innate ones. So these have been in the mind from beginningless time. So they're really deeply embedded in the mind. And they are both kinds of obscurations, the afflictive obscurations, the afflictions, greed, hatred, ignorance, pride, jealousy, and so on, and their seeds and imprints. So those are being abandoned, as well as the obscurations to omniscience, which according to this school is the conception of true existence and the seeds of that and the imprints of that. So there's a lot of obscurations that need to be cleared up. And because they've been in the mind from beginningless time, then it's not easy to get rid of them. So this is just giving you an idea that it doesn't happen all in one go as in the path of seeing, but it happens in stages as over the path of meditation. So we've completed the 11 topics, and then there's just a kind of summary of some of the last topics that we looked at today that are related to the path of meditation. And so this summary looks at some of those and how they relate to the Bodhisattva's path. So as we know, as we've heard many times, that if we want to become Buddhas, we need the two collections, merit and wisdom. And the reason we need those two is to be able to attain the two bodies of the Buddha. I mean, the bodies of the Buddha are sometimes divided into 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, but the twofold division of the bodies of the Buddha is in the Rupakaya and the Dharmakaya. Rupakaya are the form bodies, where the Buddha will manifest in different forms to help different sentient beings according to their level of ability and so on. And so the cause of the Rupakaya, the form bodies, is merit. So that's why we need to accumulate merit by generating bodhicitta, great compassion, love, practicing generosity, and so on. So those are some of the ways of accumulating merit. Plus, making offerings and so on. So there's many different ways of accumulating merit. So merit is mainly the cause for the Rupakaya. And then the other aspect is wisdom, which mainly has to do with the wisdom realizing emptiness. But there are other kinds of wisdom as well, like wisdom of selflessness, wisdom of impermanence, wisdom of karma. But wisdom is mainly the cause of the Dharmakaya. That's the Buddha's omniscient mind. So we need both merit and wisdom to be able to attain Buddhahood with the two kayas, Rupakaya and Dharmakaya. And the Rupakaya is also called the body for the sake of others, or the welfare of others, the purpose of others. So with the Rupakaya, a bodhisattva, a Buddha, a Buddha is able to help other sentient beings. And the Dharmakaya is called for one's own purpose, the kaya for one's own purpose, in the sense that with the Dharmakaya, one has eliminated all the obscurations in one's mind and has attained all the realizations that are to be attained. So you brought your own welfare, your own purpose to fulfillment. But yeah, we can't attain enlightenment and have one and not the other. Both the Rupakaya and the Dharmakaya are required. So then these two kinds of collections are accumulated by a bodhisattva on the path of meditation, because the three contaminated paths, which are 6, 8, and 9, these bring about the collection of merit. So those three are paths of meditation of belief, of dedication, and rejoicing. So by practicing those, a bodhisattva accumulates that particular collection of merit to be able to attain the Rupakaya. And then the two uncontaminated paths, 10 and 11, these bring about the collection of wisdom. Yeah, so the main subject matter of chapter 2 is the knower of paths, which talked about how a bodhisattva needs to know all the different paths of all the different vehicles explained in Buddhism, the hearer's vehicle, solitary realizer's vehicle, and the bodhisattva's vehicle. So they need to know all those different paths, because eventually they'll become a Buddha and they'll be helping all sentient beings. And some sentient beings are more inclined to the hearer's path, and others are more inclined to the solitary realizer's path, others are inclined to the bodhisattva's path. So they need to be able to guide all these different types of beings with different inclinations to their goals, and eventually all the way to full enlightenment. So it's part of the skillful means of a Buddha to be able to know all the paths. And so a bodhisattva needs to lay the groundwork for that by knowing all of those different paths to be able to do that work when they become enlightened. So that's it for chapter 2. And I can pause here and see if there's any questions. I did prepare a little bit of chapter 3, but we can see if there's any remaining questions before we go on to that.
Stephen has a question, Venerable.
Yep.
Thank you, Doris. Thank you, Venerable. I've got a few questions. Well, I'll ask one and then see if anyone wants to ask. The 9 levels of the path of meditation of purity, do those go with the 9 grounds on the path of meditation? Or like, are they the same, or is this something?
Yeah. There's actually, so there's a correlation. When a bodhisattva attains, well, the term we used before is uninterrupted path. So an uninterrupted path we looked at that with the path of seeing. An uninterrupted path is a particular realization of emptiness, a direct realization of emptiness that has sufficient power to be able to eliminate or abandon a certain portion of the afflictions. So as the obscuration. So as the Bodhisattva is progressing along the path of meditation, there at certain times will attain one of those uninterrupted paths. And when they attain an uninterrupted path, they wipe out, one level of those obscurations. And then following the uninterrupted path, they have a liberated path. Like in the next moment is a liberated path, which again is a wisdom directly realizing emptiness. So the liberated paths are the beginning point of the grounds. Yeah. So, yeah, I didn't go into that particular detail, but yeah, there is that correlation. So each time they eliminate a level of afflictions, then they move from one ground to the next.
And I guess if no one else wants to ask a question, I'd like to ask a little bit about the contaminated paths of meditation, which actually are kind of fascinating to me. The reason is I had guess wrongly assumed that like all the major work was done in meditative equipoise on emptiness in the path of meditation. I didn't realize that there were these paths, but the other reason is because they seem really relatable. I mean, these are the things we do every day in class and in practice at the Gompa. And so I guess, first of all, the path of meditation of belief. So it's a clear realization, but it's conceptual. So it's an inferential cognition. So this happens in some kind of state of meditation. Is that fair to say? But not like meditation. Go ahead.
I don't think you have to say it's inferential. I don't think every conceptual realization is an inferential realization. So I didn't come across that particular term. It just means it's not a direct non-conceptual realization. So like I mentioned, one example of a conceptual path of meditation is bodhicitta. So the bodhicitta in the mind of the bodhisattva on the path of meditation, they do have bodhicitta, and that's not a direct non-conceptual state of mind. It's a conceptual state of mind. They're thinking enlightenment. I want to reach enlightenment to help all sentient beings. So it's conceptual. But no, I don't think it would be right to say that it's inferential. Yeah.
I guess, Venerable, why I say that is that an inferential cognition is kind of the highest level of realization just before you have a direct realization. So here, and of course, the inferential cognition is the strongest form of belief. So I guess I jumped to the conclusion that a bodhisattva on the path of meditation would be, really focusing on that belief in the three mothers and, attain a very high level of conceptual faith, I guess, is the mental factor in this particular, I guess you could call it, I don't know, I think it's a meditation. It's called a clear realization. I guess I'm sounding a little bit confused here because I am. And I sort of assumed that a clear realization had to do with, a direct non-conceptual.
No, the term clear, I never found a definition. I asked, but
I remember that, yeah.
Didn't seem to be a definition for that term clear realization. But what they do say is that it's synonymous with path and with ground and with exalted wisdom. So there's these terms that are all synonymous. And there is a definition for path. I don't remember it right now, but the first actual path that a person attains is the path of accumulation. And with the path of accumulation, for a bodhisattva, that's when they have uncontrived bodhicitta. Okay, so it's not like a wisdom realizing emptiness. It's uncontrived, spontaneous bodhicitta. Of course, they've been working for a long, long, long time on generating bodhicitta in a contrived way, in a effortful way, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche calls it. They've been, meditating on all sentient beings as my mother, great compassion, and so on, all these causes for bodhicitta. So they've been generating that state of mind for a long time. And finally, it's at the point where it's uncontrived. And so that uncontrived bodhicitta, that's a path, so it's not like, wisdom of emptiness. So it doesn't, path or clear realization doesn't have to be like a non-conceptual realization of emptiness or anything like that. So, yeah.
And the other two are also like really intriguing because, well, dedication, I mean, we perform that to the best of our abilities at the end of every practice and even our own practices. And so that seems to me, it's like a practice. And also rejoicing, well, I mean, that is just, it almost seems like that's an emotional state in a way, just appreciating, right? I guess running through your mind, and it's almost like a visualization process where you're rejoicing by, I guess, imagining the benefits, the merits that you've seen, and, rejoicing in what you, I guess, what appears to you as their benefits and their ramifications and so on. So, yeah, these are just really kind of amazing to me to see these. I guess it's what you do when you're on break time, right? When you're a bodhisattva and you're not meditating.
Yeah, they would be doing these during break times, in between sessions of meditative equipoise. But our teachers are always encouraging us to do these practices, dedicate our merits and rejoice, and then having belief or faith in the efficacy of the teachings, especially perfection of wisdom teachings. So we're being encouraged all the time to cultivate these states of mind. And so we're practicing now, and then we get more and more familiar with these. And then when we're on the path of meditation, we'll be old pros at those states of mind. But it is nice to know that bodhisattvas aren't just always sitting in meditation on emptiness. They're doing lots of other things as well, including some of the things that we do, but in a much better way than we do them. But they say the path on the sutra, a person who's following the sutra path to enlightenment, it takes a long time, like 3 countless great eons. That means many, 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 many lifetimes. They're engaging in these practices. And so, they can't always be in meditative equipoise. They need to do lots of other things as well, all 6 perfections. And also, it comes in the text. I haven't mentioned it yet, but you probably heard, as a bodhisattva progresses through the grounds, there are these different kinds of qualities that they have, such as the one that always stays in my mind is being able to emanate different forms of themselves. And I think with the path of seeing in the first ground, they have the ability to emanate 100 different forms, 100 different manifestations of themselves. So they can go, they're not just confined to one body, but they can, have many bodies out there helping sentient beings. And then with the second ground, it becomes 1,000. We're able to, send out 1,000 emanations. And I don't remember all the numbers, but it just increases incredibly as they progress through the grounds. And, by the time they reach the 10th ground, it's like, 1,000,000 to the, 64? I don't know. It's just like, inconceivable, huge number of emanations. And then when you're a Buddha, it's countless, like you can't even put a number on it. So this is something that increases as the bodhisattva moves along the path. So their ability to help sentient beings just becomes amazing with these different powers or abilities or qualities that they have.
There's a question in the chat from Gabriella. Gabriella, do you want to speak a question, or would you like me to read it?
I'll go ahead and read it. It's okay. I'm just curious, how does one evaluate where they are in the path to Buddhahood? Or is that even an exercise that can or should be done if you're practicing solo? It seems like it's only something that can be done with a teacher without self-deluding yourself. But you also have to be self-aware of where you are on the path to a certain degree as well, right? So you can grow and evolve. So it's just kind of interesting to me. I'm not really sure.
Well, I think that if you think you've achieved some realization, it's good to check with a teacher. Check with a reliable teacher about what you're experiencing, and they would be able to confirm or not if what you think has happened has actually happened. So this does happen sometimes. I've heard stories of people going to a teacher and saying, I had this and that experience. Have I achieved the path of seeing? And, yeah. I think the Dalai Lama, he tells a story about somebody who came to see him, and this person said they had a dream, and in their dream they saw many, many, many bodhisattvas, and they thought, oh, does that mean, I think they thought they'd achieved the path of seeing, yeah. And they really thought that, they really thought, oh, that means I'm on the path of seeing. And then the Dalai Lama started explaining some of the other qualities or abilities one would have if one has attained the path of seeing. And the Dalai Lama said, can you do that? Do you have that experience? And the person kind of went, oh. So we can sometimes be deceived by things that happen to us and jump to conclusions. So it is always good to check with a teacher. But then I think probably when you're at a higher level, you probably don't need to do that anymore. You can determine for yourself where you're at, because you would know very well what are the signs, what are the criteria of attaining these paths. And so, yeah, I mean, if you can create 1,000 emanations, well, probably on the second ground.
It definitely just seems like something a teacher would be essential for. So you're not yourself, but you also have to, I think, be fair to yourself and realize that you're not necessarily at the ant stage, and maybe you're more at bigger of an insect stage on your path.
Yeah, because even the Dalai Lama talks about talking to his teachers, like Ling Rinpoche, about an experience he had regarding emptiness, and then Ling Rinpoche gave feedback, and so even the Dalai Lama does that, and it's very important for all of us to check with our teachers.
Thank you, Venerable.
So I think we're run out of time. So now we get to dedicate, get to practice. Dedication, creating the cause to be able to dedicate when we're bodhisattvas on the path of meditation. Okay, so all the merit, all the good energy created during this time, starting off with a good motivation, listening, thinking about, generating positive thoughts and aspirations as we go along. So we've definitely created a great amount of merit. So we can dedicate this, and we can also add in the merit of all other beings. So we can think of the merit created by all sentient beings, ordinary beings, as well as Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So we can think of a huge ocean of merit, positive energy, and dedicate all of that together with ours to enlightenment. And it's also good to keep in mind emptiness, that the person oneself who has created the merit and is dedicating the merit doesn't exist truly, ultimately from our own side. And the merits we've created are also empty of existing truly, ultimately. And the goal towards which we're dedicating the merit, enlightenment, for the benefit of all beings. So all of these things are equally empty of true existence, but they still do exist conventionally. They still bring results. And we can also rejoice when we're dedicating merit. We can feel joyful that we have created this merit and that we're now dedicating it. So that's a way of giving ourselves encouragement to do more. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-fulfilling, wish-granting jewel, source of every benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the three sublime ones, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Venerable. Always very, very, very interesting.